Hi, everyone. Hi, Eunice. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Malini. How are you?
Good. Welcome back, everyone, to Video Reimagined. We are very excited about today's show. We have some very special ladies joining us today, and we wanted to start talking about just the world of women in tech. And obviously, there are many reasons why we want to get into this narrative and join the conversation. Much of it is around the fact that although we're striving for it, we're not really at equality right yet. So Eunice and I did a little bit of research. And Eunice, you want to share what we found?
Sure. So we found a couple of stats. These specifically are from builtin.com. And I'm just reading the stats. So we have 26% of computing related jobs are held by women. Just 3% of computing related jobs are held by African American women, 6% held by Asian women, and 2% held by Hispanic women. That one's interesting, and we should come back to that one. And then lastly, 43% of Americans believe women create a safer, more respectful work environment than men. And only 5% of Americans believe that men create a safer workspace.
And I think that's where we really want to dig into and welcome our three lovely ladies, because I would say 100% of Socialive believes that having women as leaders and in the workforce really helps our culture better. So with no further delay, we'd like to welcome Anu Karwa, who is our People of Ops and Brands, Jennifer Burak, our VP of Marketing, and Ranesha Mattu, our VP of Sales. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Hi,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thank you.
We're so happy to have y'all here because we get to see virtually, we get to see and hear y'all lead and just be under that as well and see all of your experience. And so with that, from being under leadership and then also being in a leadership role, what does leadership mean to each of you? Jen, can we start with you?
Absolutely. So the first thing that comes to mind is really about bottoms up versus top down leadership. I think being able to inspire a group to work together towards a common goal. It's about encouraging people to do their best work. It's about understanding people's strengths and their weaknesses and maximizing them and knowing when to minimize them. And ultimately, it's to be a good leader, I think you've got to be secure enough to empower people, and that means understanding that good ideas come from anywhere and anyone, and having the humility to accept it.
I love that, being secure enough to empower people.
Yeah,
that's very important. What about you, Anu?
Yeah, I think a lot of similar to what Jen just said. I really do think it's about showing up every day for my team with just the highest level of integrity and accountability, because I really do see that my purpose is to serve my team. It's to set them up for success. It's to understand them also, not just as the person who shows up at work, but it's to understand them, very holistically. For example, one of my team members actually is based in New Orleans, and has been pretty devastated by the hurricane there. So the first focus the whole weekend was, what can we do to make sure you're safe, and then also right now, what do we do to support you? So you're really thinking about all of my team members in much more holistic fashion.
For sure.
love that.
I can second that. That happened when we had the Houston ice storm, and the same thing. I appreciate the support that I had in that as well. Ranesha, what about you?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I really loved how Anu used the word serve. I tend to really think about this concept of how can I serve my team? How can I set the tone for them to have the ability to activate their very best, and being able to create a safe environment for them to do that, especially in this virtual world is essential. On the day-to-day, that really looks like, for me, is being available early and often, having informal conversations, coaching through breakthrough. There's just so many different ways of making sure that I'm accessible to my team, and really leading by being a trusted partner and being in it together. It's a collaboration. It's about communication and being inclusive, about being open to different ways to getting things done.
Yeah, I want to second that and actually fourth that for all of what was just said. I think the culture that we've cultivated here has allowed other women in the company to reach out to leaders for anything and everything because of that accessibility, regardless of the fact that we are remote. I know early on in my career here, I had a moment with a customer that just felt uncomfortable and not something that I felt I had the power to navigate. And immediately I was like, well, Anu and Ranesha are here. They're leaders in our company. They look like me. Maybe they've gone through something like this. And I think my takeaway from that was that I was just empowered to deal with it myself, which was amazing. It was the ability to be coached by the fact that, we have your back and we'll be there for you, but also, here's how you can navigate it yourself too. And I think that really was a wonderful way to set off my adventure here at Socialive. So thank you all for that.
And just to build off of
yeah.
that, I just want to say that I feel like that set you up to be a leader, because it just means that leadership can happen all over. It just has nothing to do with your title. It doesn't have to do with whether you manage people or don't. I really believe that a leader can come from anywhere. And I feel like having those conversations with you just set yourself up to be truly empowered and be a leader.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, how do women, especially in tech, lead differently than men? And we'd love to start off with you, Ranesha.
Yes, it's a tough question, but at the same time, I can speak from my experience only because I haven't really walked in the shoes of what it would be like to be a male leader. But I will start with this: is drive, ambition, confidence, strength. That, in my mind, is genderless. We all have that power as human beings, and I really like to encourage that. I also believe that there are some superpowers, at least for me as a leader, that I tend to really want to leverage, which is this idea of being empathetic, leading with an open mind, and really giving people an opportunity to collaborate. And I think that those approaches, it comes down again to communication styles and thinking about how we can solve problems together, and being open to different ways of doing that. So I tend to think it could be genderless, but I have noticed patterns where we tend to be very open-minded and collaborative as women when it comes to operating as a team and solving problems.
I totally agree with that. And I think it's hard because we don't want to stereotype, right?
Yeah. That's
but,
right.
There are patterns. And, to be more democratic, more collaborative, less of a command and control style, which I think is starting to wane out, in general. I think it just doesn't work. And it's really ultimately about giving up your own self-interest for a larger common goal. And I just think like you're going to find that, in women leadership, I think, more often. But I think things are changing, which is really great to see in general.
Yeah, I think it's so cool that the soft skills part of leadership are now being highlighted so much in just everyday narrative that traditionally women have been told that they have, and maybe it is a weakness in the business world, but I think now it's coming across as something that's really important to engage in and listen and have that empathy factor that all of you were talking about in the previous question.
Yeah, I actually think that's very important. Like, I feel more empowered knowing that those soft skills are that valuable in an exchange or an interaction with somebody, because it's needed. It creates the safe space for people to then be vulnerable, for them to then, be empowered to make decisions and go forth. So it's very much important. I do have a question along with that then. So with leadership roles, Anu, as VP of People Ops, what initiatives are you spearheading at Socialive to facilitate more women in leadership roles here?
Yeah, I'm really excited about some of the things that we're doing. One that's really direct is our women's network. So this actually kind of started informally, just in the way that we operate, and something close to what Malini was mentioning, is we just started really being cross-functional support for each other. And as our numbers gained, we still have some work to do, but as our numbers have gained, we've decided to really formalize that. We've created a women's network, and it's there to help support each other, to give each other coaching, and also that informal mentorship that can happen, and especially across department. So the ability for Malini who's in CS, to work with someone in sales and to work with someone in marketing, and to have those kind of mentors has been a really important thing. I also think that, a lot of people think you have to be in person to do that, but that's just not the case. We've been able to create a really supportive environment for the women on our team and really be champions for each other. The other thing that I want to point out here is that we've really gotten behind a flexible work schedule and remote work. So we are staying 100% remote. And I read something really interesting over the weekend about how being remote has actually leveled the physical playing field, and that we're all the same box size on a screen. And it's good to know that, because I've heard that if you have a height advantage of 5 inches over a working career of 30 years, you will likely make $150,000 more. So knowing that the playing field has been physically leveled here because we are all the same box size really does make a difference. It's also a really nice way to have asynchronous communication. So when we're in a physical meeting or on a conference room table, it is sometimes easy to get talked over or maybe not feel as comfortable speaking up. What this has done, though, it allows us to, one, take turns in speaking, but then also speak, via email, via chat, and allows, I think, women to have a greater voice in what we're doing.
That's great. And yes, I want to talk about that women's network. I feel like we could have a whole video reimagined just on the women's network, but I do want to touch on just how it has been such a strengthening force within the company. And as a woman, it's like you said, we're not all in each other's faces all the time. And so that was something that, I think I was woman number 10 in there. So I thought, I felt special, but I've seen it grow, and I just see it's not about, everything about work and what's going on in our work day. It's how is your mental health? It's, what helps you get on through the day or stuff like that, but that builds connection, right? And so then we can have those further conversations when we're doing our job, and it's all empowering. I remember one time I saw, and this was just recently, I saw a quote, I had a bit of a day and I saw a quote in there, and I was like, and it really helped. I looked at it later on in the evening. I was just looking at stuff, and I didn't see it when I was on, during the workday, but to know that was there and I could go back and look at it, it helps not only in my professional life, it helps in my, my daily life. So I think it's all around empowering, and I don't know, it's a movement that really makes Socialive special and so important.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I have the privilege and honor of starting to manage Eunice, and I think some of the things that the little nuggets we get in the Women's Network chat have really facilitated some of the conversations we have that are just about life in general, I think, but also professional development and what we want to, do when we grow up is really how we put it. So given that, what role can team members play to best support their female peers in the business and tech world? And Ranesha, we'll start with you again. Really want to keep this general in terms of both male and female as well.
Absolutely. Being that I'm in sales, I tend to look at things in numbers. I think it's this idea of really being mindful of driving towards this 50-50 mindset, which we still have a lot of work to do. As you highlighted. And ultimately, when we're thinking about that, it's thinking about what can we do in all levels of the organization to help drive that change. And I think all we have to do is really take a look at our customers and people we're engaging with, people we're doing business with. It's evolved. And so I tend to think that we need to match that. We need to bring the diversity and inclusivity that is reflected out there in the world with our customers as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
See you nodding, Jennifer. Anything to add there?
Yeah, I love those points, Ranesha. Another thought that comes to mind is just trust and assume best intentions. And sometimes it's hard when you're filled with fear because you want to do a good job and you're trying to achieve something, and you don't know necessarily what your colleagues are going through and why they're communicating the way that they do. And it's always about just centering yourself and having that trust, assuming best intentions. And the last thing I'll say is don't reject vulnerability in others, because I think vulnerability, and we talked about this earlier, is actually courage in disguise. rather than weakness. And it builds that trust that I'm talking about. And it builds that ability to assume best intentions. And I think that's critically important when you're in a remote environment. Like, you have to be really thoughtful and intentional about the relationships you build. So.
Well, we have to end this question with you, Anu, since you are VP of People. So over to you.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to not only be open to learnings, but to be active learners. So I've actually partnered with Derek, our VP of Engineering, to really understand what we can do to actually widen the pipeline of female tech talent of STEM backgrounds. So he and I together have really taken this on. He's really open to just learning. So we've been learning that if you have one female candidate in your candidate pool, that female candidate has a 0% chance almost of getting hired. But if you change that to 2 out of 10, the female candidate has about a 50% chance of getting hired. So when he and I learned that, we embraced it and we got behind it together and said, all right, what are the things that we need to actively do to actually just widen that pipeline? So it was that being an active learner and open to new information that I think has really made a big impact.
Definitely. I want to actually ask, because these are all, really great insight. What are some of the challenges that you faced during, at being a woman in leadership? What are some of those challenges? And Jen, I wanted to start with you and hear from you on that.
Okay, cool. Well, I think, one story I wanted to share here is when I was in my 30s and I was in a leadership position and kind of climbing the ladder, so to speak. I was very, very focused on my career, but I also wanted to start a family. And I remember getting mixed messages from my male counterparts. They were asking me if I was ever going to have a baby, and then correcting themselves, saying, "Oh, but your work is your baby," because it was so demanding. And basically saying I couldn't do both. And it was very confusing at the time. To make it even worse, I was going through IVF, unexplained infertility. And so there was just so many emotions going on. And there were a few years that I really struggled deeply with wanting to build a career and wanting to start a family. Eventually, I did get pregnant, and I did have children. But at the time, I was deathly afraid of saying a word. I thought it was going to, set me off course. And I was lucky, and this is a while ago, but we had a CFO and a head of HR who had just started a women's network before there were women's networks. And I actually thought it was like really awkward at the time. But in the end of the day, I ended up blurting out in this women's group, "I'm pregnant." And the support and the making it's okay. You can have a career and you can be a mother, and we're here to support you. It was really, really incredible. So that's my story.
Oh, that's interesting. Getting mixed messages, not really knowing if I do something that I'm supposed to do or I want to do, right? Is that going to affect something that I also really love? Thank you for sharing.
I think it's more of a open topic than it was years ago, but it's because of, I think, women in leadership that have opened that door, opened that dialogue. It is not the challenge that it used to be, and I am very thankful to those women leaders at my last company that made it easier.
Yeah. Anything to add, Ranesha or Anu, on any challenges you faced in being a leadership role?
I felt that sigh.
Yeah, I know, right? Deep sigh. It's so fascinating. It's so much of it has evolved, and Eunice and Malini, I tend to think about it's folks like yourselves that really, for people like myself as a leader, that really have really influenced and made me realize, in my past, the difficult things that I have probably run into, mostly, and it's been diffused currently with this virtual world. To Anu's point, in this box, I don't look necessarily 5'1". So it's just, there have been challenges, but I tend to always look at those challenges as opportunities. And being a pioneer, there's always someone that has to be first to open the door for others.
Definitely didn't know you were 5'1" until I met you. So
No, I know, right? I shouldn't have shared that.
No, I didn't remember. I saw you and I was like, oh wow, we're all the same playing field and we're in the boxes.
That's right.
Anything from you, Anu?
Well, you know, it's actually what Ranesha said just kind of perked something up. I remember landing this, you know, kind of seemingly a dream job at a really high-performing startup consumer package company, and learning literally the next day after I got the job offer that I was pregnant, and then being told maybe that same day that they had 0 paid leave, and at that time, states didn't have any support as well. And so, you know, I did what I had to do at that point. I took on the role and figured out a way to make sure everything was covered while it was gone. And then I took that as just an opportunity that when I was in a position to really have an influence, that I would make that change. And so that's why, you know, at Socialive, we have 12 weeks of paid family leave. And that is regardless of what situation you're in. And it's just so important that we can learn from those opportunities and then pay it forward.
Awesome.
So I think similarly, because of the challenges, what was the best career advice that you ladies were given? Anu, let's start with you.
Yeah, so actually kind of building off of that last one. I mean, I've had so much amazing advice through the years, but there's two pieces that really stuck kind of on a practical level. One is as a working parent, and that is when you're at work, focus on work, and when you're at home, focus on your family. And just keep that focus, because there's often competing, you know, priorities that happen. But if you can maintain that component, then you'll do better at both. The second piece is about finding a culture and not a role or a company, because if you find the right culture that really supports you as a holistic person, then you'll just continue to grow there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What about you, Jen?
I also have two special things I think I'd like to share. And one of them is just, I had a boss that said, you know, don't be afraid to make mistakes, you know, take risks, push to the edge of what you think you're capable of, you know, and, you know, it's with making mistakes, because we all make them, that you learn. And it accelerates your learning. So it can actually accelerate your career path, which is counterintuitive. The other thing, when I was really young and starting out, and I knew I wanted to be a leader, I had read read something in the newspaper, and it was a quote by Mark Twain, and it said, keep away from people who try to belittle your ambitions. Small people always do that, but the really great make you feel that you too can become great. And it was I put it on my computer. I mean, it got old and yellow, you know, when we had newspapers and cut things out. But I honestly have always kind of stuck to that, you know, about being a servant leader. And it's about making other people become great. And that's always stuck with me.
And last but not least, Ranesha.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for empowering people to be bold and take risks, calculated risks, but also to not be afraid to make mistakes. That's really critical. At a high level, I tend to think a mentor taught me a long time ago is to always be a detective, not a stenographer. And it was in all areas, is to do my research and to make sure that I'm fact checking and I'm kind of doing my rounds before jumping to conclusions. And that's always resonated with me, even though that I think is a journalism expression, but it still resonates with me.
Yeah. I think from all three of you, and Eunice and I have talked about this too, is that the joy part of it, like make sure you're having fun while doing it. I think that resonates with not just the ladies of Socialive. I think everyone. We're in this like fast moving world of live video, and there will be mistakes. There will be like awkward moments when you're on live. You don't realize you're on live, or maybe you're like waiting to be on live. And I think just having fun while you're doing it, I think is definitely something that's really resonated with me, and Eunice and I talk about a lot. So
definitely. Yeah. One of my favorite things about working with all of you is just the authenticity. Like I loved, I enjoyed hearing, all of your responses just now. It's really important that we can have these conversations with that, essentially helps us grow.
Yeah.
But I would pose that question to all of you, even you, Malini, like what is one thing, one of your favorite things about working with the other women at Socialive?
I guess I jumped the gun a little bit. It's definitely the joy part and the giggles we have along the way. But I think I would also just circle back to the first story that I shared. It's the feeling of being empowered and being able to pass that down to the other people I manage or the other people that I indirectly have influence on or work with, right? It's just the fact that you feel bold enough to say, like, here's an idea I have and maybe let's run with it, but I want to hear yours too. And I think everyone feels that sense of ownership here at Socialive, and that comes from, of course, the ladies who are leading us, but I think it's also a culture that's cultivated to say, I am going to own this, and I'm going to run with it, and I also want your perspective on it. Maybe you've done it before, or maybe you've touched a part of it that I haven't been thinking about.
Jen?
Yeah, go for it, Jen.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Honestly, the thing that really has struck me is that, all the women and the men, but the women are like a super fierce, intelligent bunch. And very often when you get highly driven and intelligent women, it becomes super competitive. And I've been in that environment where you feel like there's not enough accolades to go around and you want to be the one to get the limelight. And somehow this culture is all about rooting for one another and championing one another. And there's more than enough to go around. And that makes it so much more fun.
Yeah, building off what Jen said, I completely agree with that. It's such a great privilege to work with all of the women on the screen who are just like unapologetically ambitious and driven, and we just hold each other up and cheer each other on all the time. And I love that. Like it's fantastic to work in that environment. And there's just this kinship that we have with each other, right? It's a shorthand. We've been through a lot of the same experiences, even though they were in different places and we've had different career paths. There is a shorthand in the experiences that we have had, and it's wonderful to work with other people like that.
Yeah, I really quickly tend to think it's when I have the opportunity of engaging with the fellow incredible women on our team, it brings me to this idea of like, we are collectively aware that we are just getting started and we have so much work to do as a network, and that we are all better together, and leading with this idea of supporting each other is the right way to go about it, and always having sort of a beginner's mind, and even for myself is being open to new ways of doing things. I think that's essential.
I love that. And actually, it's a great way to bring our lovely conversation to a close. I wanted to read this quote that I found from Ellen Pao, who is the former Reddit CEO and current co-founder of Project Include. And it says, we need to understand that if we all work on inclusion together, it's going to be faster, broader, better, and more thorough than anything we could do on our own. And I think that's just so important because it takes everyone. It takes all of us, even though we can have these conversations with just ourselves at the end of the day. We're all included, and we're all, part of something to make it great. Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you all. That's so great.
It's a great conversation. We'll see you all next month. Let us know what else you would like to hear us talk about. We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.